Okay, so this is going to be part 3 of session 4 in the introduction to the Old Testament class, and we're going to be talking about how the themes that we mentioned in the last video fit into the greater story, or the overall story of the Old Testament and of the Bible. So again, the themes that we're talking about is the covenants, all the covenants in the Old Testament, and then idolatry. So when we're talking about the whole storyline, the meta narrative of the Old Testament is going to have the creation and then the fall of man, which happens in the 3rd chapter, and then redemption is basically redemption is the rest of it, all catching up until the new creation is going to be the promise to come. So you see the fall and redemption cycle kind of throughout the Old Testament. God redeems them from one instance or one episode, and then they fall again, and then He redeems them, and they fall again, and it's just a cycle throughout the whole thing. So the covenants come in because they're God's promises to on how He's going to redeem them. So like with Noah, He says He's never going to destroy the whole earth again, and then with Abraham, He says that He's going to make his descendants bless all the other descendants. So it's going to be through the Israelites that God is going to bless the world. And then when we get to the Mosaic thing, He says the whole law about all these things they have to do and all these sacrifices they have to do and everything is all to make God number one, right? So God is there. So that's what all these um, wow, that's what all these covenants are. Is they're promises from God that if His people will follow Him, then He will be with them, and that's what He wants because He loves them. And even when they fall, He comes back and says, "This is the promise. If you turn back to Me, then I will be with you." And so, um, from the very beginning in the creation, He created man to rule the earth, but to be in communion with Him. And so the covenant He had with Adam was He was going to rule the world, rule the creation, created things, and be in communion with God. And then, of course, after the fall, then the covenants change. And then as Noah comes around, and then another fall, and then the covenant change, and then another fall, and the covenant change, and then it keeps doing that. But so it's just like a repetitive cycle through and through. So um, as far as in the first the creation part, that's with Adam and them. He had that first promise, right? So that's where the covenant comes in, and then idolatry comes in right in that very first 3 chapters when they choose their way other than God's, and then that's when the cycle begins. And so then from we have the fall, and then God creates a way to save them, and so then they get back in communion. So with Abraham, he's in communion with Abraham, and then they have to go to Egypt, and then all the gods in Egypt, they're falling away from God again because whenever Moses comes in there and says that he's going to save them, they don't even believe him because they're surrounded by all these other gods, right? So then he has to show them that he is God. So he has all the plagues and everything, and then he makes a covenant with them again. And then after they get to the promised land, again they turn their back on him, and so he has to make a covenant with them again. And it's just a repeating cycle over and over and over again. Um, I'm too much. So where were we here? So it's just a repeating cycle over and over again. Of redemption, and then I'm using idolatry, which obviously it's not just idolatry, but it comes down. That's usually a thing because if you follow God with all your heart, then you don't have then all the other things like kind of on the wayside. Seek first the kingdom of God. So as it's coming through there, so you have creation with him and Adam, and then the fall, and then redemption, and then the redemption is kind of the cycle, and it continues to go, but it's all pointing the way. All these covenants are building to point to the way of Jesus because it goes from Abraham on. It's really just a reminder of Abraham's covenant because God promised Abraham that his descendants were going to be bless the nations, and then he promised and then the covenant with Moses is just kind of an expounding on that promise with Abraham, saying that through Abraham you're going to continue. And then the promise with David is just expounding on that, saying that through David, that's, or I guess narrowing down, through David his descendants are going to be the king that's on the throne forever, and then that's going to be Jesus. So it all points to the New Testament. It's kind of building everything up till you understand when the New Testament comes, when Jesus comes, he's the answer to all these things that have been promised throughout the entire thing. So, and then, so then it builds up to that, and then it kind of drops off at the end of the Old Testament saying that this is what's going to come, but then the answer does come in the form of Jesus.